Good evening and welcome to KiniNews. Here are today's top stories. Muhyiddin Yassin's government previously said the high-speed rail was simply too costly and abandoned the project by paying a multi-million ringgit compensation over to Singapore. Now, Ismail Sabri wants to revive that same project. The Kuala Lumpur-Singapore High-Speed Rail, which was terminated by former Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin at a cost of 320 million ringgit, may be revived by the current government. Singapore Prime Minister Hsien said the proposed revival was conveyed to him by Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob during a bilateral meeting in Singapore today. Lee was quoted by Bernama as telling Ismail Sabri that Singapore and Malaysia had previously reached an agreement to terminate the HSR project and it was amicably settled and closed. However, Lee said Singapore is open to fresh proposals from Malaysia on the HSR project and the two ministries of transport will discuss the matter. He said Singapore will look forward to receiving more details from Malaysia so that they can study them and consider the matter again, starting from a clean slate. The KL-S'pore HSR agreement lapsed on the 31st of December 2020. Malaysia forked out a total of 320 million ringgit to Singapore as compensation for aborting the project. Ismail Sabri is in Singapore for an official visit in conjunction with the first day of the vaccinated travel lane to Singapore. Now, fully vaccinated people may travel more easily between the two countries. It is the first day of the Malaysia-Singapore vaccinated travel lane for air travellers. For many, this would be the first time reuniting with loved ones after being separated between the two countries for several months.
It's emotional.
So, how long have you been stuck in Singapore?
Since August last year.
And
so it's good to be back home.
And how does it feel to be able to come back on a flight without having to go through quarantine?
Amazing. Really amazing. Very glad, grateful. I'm back home.
But a new variant is coming. Do you feel about the new variant?
We don't know much about it. So once we get to know better, then we'll see what happens. But I think it's enough of lockdowns, please.
This is what we are looking for. Yeah, really. I mean, it's so nice to come back to this country without having been quarantined. And I think the guys inside are fantastic. They're working very hard.
So, how long have you been away from? Have you spent 2 years in Singapore? How long is it all?
My last trip here was in January in 2019.
And you had to go to quarantine?
No, at that time it was pre-COVID. Okay. Yeah, after COVID, this is the first time we're coming back.
Oh, so happy! We haven't seen each other in almost close to 1 year. I mean, not as bad as the other family members or other people that I've been speaking to, but I'm very lucky that I could come back last year. But for my wife, it's been pretty hard living apart for a very long time.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say to people who might be thinking of the same trip but maybe are a little bit apprehensive about making the same trip?
All they have to do is to prepare themselves properly, then they can come in easily.
Travellers from Singapore do not need to apply to travel to Malaysia under the VTL since the entry facilities would be processed upon arrival. They are also not required to apply for a My Travel Pass from the Immigration Department. However, travellers must have completed a full regimen of a COVID-19 vaccine recognised by the Health Ministry. The ministry said travellers were also required to undergo RT-PCR tests within 2 days prior to their departure to Malaysia and upon arrival at KLIA. Travellers are also required to wait for their test results at the designated waiting area at KLIA and can only leave the airport once their results are confirmed negative. Still on that VTL, today is the first day for both land and air, and already the first COVID-19 case linked to it has been detected. A positive COVID-19 case has been detected at the Johor Causeway entry point on the first day of the Malaysia-Singapore Vaccinated Travel Lane or VTL. Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said the case was discovered through RTK antigen on-arrival testing conducted at the international entry point today and was being verified through confirmative testing using the RT-PCR test. He added that the Johor Bahru District Health Office was doing a risk assessment on those who travelled on the same bus as the individual to decide whether they needed to be quarantined or subjected to other restrictions. Khairi said he did not consider it as something that could derail the VTL. Instead, it would act as an example of how pre-departure and on-arrival testing are necessary preventive measures. In a post on Twitter, he said as Malaysia safely reopens its borders, there will be positive cases at points of entry and risk assessment, isolation and monitoring of close contacts will become the norm. Malaysia and Singapore reopened the Johor-Singapore Causeway today, allowing vaccinated travellers to cross the border after around 20 months of closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Najib Abdul Razak has blamed Muhyiddin Yassin's handling of COVID-19 for Malaysia's poor performance compared to its neighbours. While neighbouring countries have completed reporting economic growth rates for the third quarter of 2021, Malaysia is the only country that has officially fallen into a technical economic recession at this time. This is according to former Premier Najib Abdul Razak. In a Facebook post yesterday, the former Prime Minister added that Malaysia also has the worst economic growth rate for the same quarter among its neighbours. He said Malaysia's economy contracted by 4.5% in the third quarter of the year, while Indonesia's economy grew by 3.5%, Singapore by 6.5%, and the Philippines by 7.1%. Thailand experienced a slight decline of 0.3%. According to Najib, the country's economic performance was linked to the 7th-month nationwide emergency and suspension of parliament during the tenure of former Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin. He said it came after Malaysia became the only country in the world to declare an emergency to suspend parliament on the grounds of combating COVID-19 when in fact it was as they wanted to retain power. He added that despite the emergency with 600 billion ringgit in funds spent by the government and the half-baked lockdown which devastated the people's economy and small businesses, we still recorded among the highest new COVID-19 cases and death rates in the world. Najib also shared an article on DAP Secretary General Lim Guan Eng's comments about half-baked lockdowns being the cause for rising food prices. He said even Guan Eng understood and called on the government to not repeat the same mistake. Well, now we have a message from our sponsor, and when we're back, is the PKR logo making a comeback? Is it better than the Harapan logo? Well, PKR certainly thinks so. We'll see you after the break.
Shellfish, red meat, and beer. If you love indulging in these foods, you may end up with high uric acid level in your blood. These foods consist high level of purine, a substance that will eventually break down into uric acid and be excreted through our urine. It is recommended that the amount of dietary purines should be kept between 600 to 1000 milligrams per day. Having too much uric acid in your blood can cause attacks of gout. It can also cause kidney stones and blockage in the kidney. The crystallization of the excessive uric acid in your blood can be eased by reducing purine-rich food to only 100 to 150 milligrams daily, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and consuming urinary alkalinizer like Ural. It consists of sodium bicarbonate, citric acid, and sodium citrate that increases the urinary pH and solubility of uric acid to prevent crystallization. Best of all, it's lemon-flavored and sugar-free. Ural, effective urinary alkalinizer. Neutralize your uric acid problem now.
Welcome back. PKR appears to have a lot of faith in its logo, and they want Harapan component parties to discuss using it for future elections. PKR Communications Director Fahmi Fadzil said the party is of the view that there is a reasonable need for the PKR logo to be used again by Pakatan Harapan parties in future elections. This came following the coalition's lackluster performance in the Malacca polls. In a statement, Fahmi said that PKR's Leadership Council had met yesterday to discuss the results of the recent Malacca polls and the use of the Pakatan Harapan logo. He said based on preliminary findings, the restrictive campaigning rules during the Malacca polls had made it difficult to introduce new candidates, and the logo, which was different from the one used in GE14, had an effect on their performance. According to Fahmi, the issue had been brought up by the PKR leadership and the grassroots before this. However, because PKR understood the stand of its Harapan allies, they agreed to use the Harapan logo. He added that the matter would be discussed in more detail at the next Harapan meeting. Pakatan Harapan had used the PKR logo in Peninsular Malaysia during the 2018 general election as the coalition could not be registered at the time. However, it had used the Harapan logo in subsequent by-elections, including the Malacca polls, after being formally registered as a coalition following the 2018 general election. Kuli, who perhaps is the only person in Malaysia who has waited to be Prime Minister longer than Anwar Ibrahim, may finally be ready to retire from politics. Gua Musang MP Tengku Razaleigh Hamzah said his political career could come to an end at the next general elections. Tengku Razaleigh, who is better known as Kuli, added that he had said this several times before, but he believes this time it will be for real. In an interview with Free Malaysia today, the 84-year-old said he wanted to step down due to his age, but that would depend on the party leadership. According to Tengku Razaleigh, the problem was that if he withdrew, Gua Musang may not be a safe constituency. He said that this was the reason given to him before and that was why he had to stand in the last 2 elections. He added that the ultimate decision lay in the hands of the party leadership and should he finally step down, many in the party would be scrambling and fighting to contest for his seat. However, Tunku Razaleigh said that no constituency is safe unless you have people with influence, a strategy that's acceptable and workable, and you have steady ground with support to bolster your votes in the next general election. The veteran politician has represented Gua Musang and its predecessor Ulu Kelantan in the Dewan Rakyat since 1974, which is the longest continuous stint in parliament. Prior to that, Tunku Razaleigh served a single term in the Kelantan State Assembly. The $500,000 ringgit donation received by Nazri Abdul Aziz has nothing to do with a corruption case involving Lim Guan Eng, according to the UMNO leader. UMNO veteran Nazri Abdul Aziz received a 500,000 ringgit donation from a company director linked to the Penang Undersea Tunnel project, the Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court heard today. According to Nazri, the money was for the rehabilitation of dilapidated religious schools in Patani, Thailand. He reiterated that the monies have nothing to do with the corruption case against former Penang Chief Minister Lim Guan Eng. During the trial of the case before Judge Azura Alwi, Nazri testified that he received the donation from Consortium Zenith Beijing Urban Construction Group Sendirian Berhad Senior Executive Director Zarul Ahmad Muhammad Zulkifli. Zarul is a key prosecution witness in the graft trial against former Finance Minister Lim. When cross-examined by Lim's defense counsel Gobind Singh Dio, Nazri explained that he told the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission during an investigation into the tunnel case that he never received any money from Zarul in relation to the criminal case against the accused. Nazri, however, said he did receive money for the religious schools. The Padang Rengas MP explained that he had been involved in various donation drives to help these schools, as many Malays in Ulu Perak have Patani lineage. Well, that's a wrap from me today. For more stories, go to KiniTV.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook to get the latest news headlines. If you'd like to support the independent media, please do consider a subscription to MalaysiaKini.com. When you're heading out, please don't forget your mask, and when you can, do try to stay home. I'm Daniel Anthony. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay safe, Malaysia.